Welcome everyone to this introduction to bid writing as part of the Delivery Growth for SMEs presentation for Branduin. It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we start, just let me tell you a little about myself. My name is Alan Brown. I, as it says there, I have over 10 years experience delivering contracts to both local and national government. And I've been on both sides of that fence. At the time I worked with Capita, with a department that did nothing but bid on tenders for government work, but also procuring on behalf of the company. So I've been on both sides of the tender process. We are, of the small company that I run, we're now very proud to be new partners with Branduin, looking to expand the Fit to Bid function, which we're going to talk about today, into the north of England. But that's obviously a different story. Today we're concentrating on Watford. So that's just a little bit about me. So it isn't about me, but just as an introduction. Okay, so the idea of this is to give you a competitive edge. We have this introduction to bid writing, which is today's kind of foundation, where we will talk about several areas. We won't go into lots of detail, but several areas where to give you an idea of the flavour of how to approach this market and how to construct a quality bid. And then as you can see there on the 7th of February, there is a further more advanced presentation, which is to improve your bid response. And then there's first things. We'll get to that later on in the presentation to give you an idea of what's involved in that. So everything that's in here, as it says there, is based on the principles of best practice and excellence in selling. And if we concentrate mostly on the government sector, the public sector, you do sell to them, but you sell in a slightly different way than you might do in the commercial world. So on that basis, we will go into lots of areas. There is quite a lot to go through today, and I want to make sure that we get through that and leave time for, we have a couple of interactive elements. Nothing to be concerned about, it'll just be done in the chat. And I must stress at this point, there are no kind of wrong answers with the kind of things we're going to be asking you to participate, just to give you an idea of where your thoughts are and help you understand how this process works. But there's no test, there's no scores, there's no quiz. Okay, so the kind of things we'll cover are understanding the basics, what you actually have to have the basis in right, what your basic collateral and documentation would need to be, your pre-qualification questions, etc., that are going to be done for any tender. But then the kind of questions that you would be asked in the tender process about understanding their objectives, confirming your solution, what your selling points are, what makes you the right company for this particular tender, why should they select you, how you can articulate your benefits, and how you can evidence that, and really importantly, how you can research and find out information about the client prior to tendering, which will help inform your tender and make it a lot stronger. And the two themes that are going to run through this, as we get to the last one, it says write a bespoke, accurate, clear and concise bid response. The two themes that can run through this, one is understanding your client, and research will help with that. And the other one is about making sure that you answer the questions that are asked in a really concise, accurate and unambiguous fashion. And we will go through them. They'll become clear as we go along. So first off, about Branduin. So Branduin, going for some years now, and it's they consult with local authorities and growth hubs and chambers of commerce, and they've been delivering support programs to small businesses for some considerable time with an impressive reputation, and they developed several programs, of which Fit to Bid is one. You can see, I think I'm reliably informed, this has taken over 10 years to develop these partnerships and collaborations. You can say that's a very impressive, and Branduin are quite rightly proud of having these relationships with all these different organisations and local authorities to the benefit of small businesses in these areas. And if we look at the services that Branduin offer, there are various ones here, in all various different areas. You can see from exporting to finance to help with sales. And today, obviously, we're concentrating on the Fit to Bid, which comes under the community wealth area, which is something that's a term used throughout local authorities. They understand that what they should do when possible is to use suppliers in their area, keep the wealth within that community. So that's how that works. And the programs have been delivered, as you can see here. All these various elements in different programs with different areas, Ealing and Brent and Hammersmith, all very successfully. And this continues to expand. What I must say, actually, for those in the Watford area, you're very fortunate, because at the moment, what Brandon offer is to our knowledge is unique. And while we're looking forward to expanding this into other areas of the country, it's not something that's available everywhere. So it's something you are really fortunate to have this opportunity to have this funded program available to you. So for small companies, when we have conversations, and this is the same with myself, even before I was working with Brandon, there is, so when you start this conversation about working in the public sector in particular, the right kind of questions or objections or concerns come up. And these actually are covered in things like insufficient experience in the public sector, or lack of knowledge of or misunderstanding of what the public sector is. Some people believe it's a closed shop, it's only for large companies, etc., which is not the case. So the industry dominated by big companies that lock sesames out. That's not the case. I understand how that people believe that, but it's not the case. Or that the market is completely unknown, and companies don't actually realise that this sector is open and available to them. Or you don't know the right people to talk to. You don't understand the correct strategy because it's different from maybe your normal sales activity. And one of the big things in approaching a tender response is to make sure you have really good test case studies and client testimonials and references to make sure that you can evidence that you can do what you said you've done. You've already delivered it. And this thing, we're unable to devote adequate time. That also is an issue. There is a time element here, but if you need to learn to manage, and one of the things that we'll get into here in this presentation is to understand the elements that you have to do and how you should manage your time to make sure that you deliver properly, because this is all about quality. A quality bid will do much better than a poor one. It's no point doing a quick poor one because it is pointless. It's worth putting the time in. The actual tendering process, which is a process and once understood is fairly straightforward, will appear, if you've not done it before, could be just off-putting, oh, that's just too difficult. And one of the things we want to get across today is by the end of this presentation is for you to believe actually it isn't that difficult, that it is something that you are able to do yourself. Inexperience in developing and writing strong bids. Again, this presentation isn't going to go into detail on how to write a strong bid. It's going to give you some pointers, but we do get into that in the later presentation to give you some more practical examples and guidance as to what a strong bid looks like. And then with the same thing, I suppose, is that the content, no idea what to put into response. It's a lot more than just providing your brochure. And again, we will get into that as the presentation goes on. So Fit to Bid has a methodology. And the approach is to engage with procurement. So actively engage with the procurement so using a local authority. Then there is an online bid capability assessment, which we'll talk about in more detail later, but this gives you an idea both for yourself and for us, if you're working with us, to understand what your blockers are, what your limitations are, what your concerns are, and your strengths, to then support you to then improve your bidding skills, do the sales enablement, which is take it to the next stage where you're actually tendering, and then some tender advice to take you through the whole process. So when you get to your final, which is the meet the buyer, so you're in a position where you understand how this process works and you can actively have these conversations either face-to-face or online. And you are, as the phrase, you are fit to bid in order to progress this without thinking, right, I don't know what I'm doing and I have no roadmap. So as you can see here, to expand upon the benefits, so this funded program gives you all these elements and more, but an obvious one, assessment of your bid writing skills, to look at what you know now, and to see where your strengths or weaknesses are so we can improve them. And understanding what best practice looks like, You will have 2 face-to-face meet the buyer events. These are incredibly powerful things to be in front of both local authority procurement teams, but also some large commercial purchasers, which Brandywin have excellent relationships with. Then access to 2 confidential one-to-one tender advice sessions. So as it says, that's about you and your business and exactly what you need and how you can be supported to get the best out of this process. Assistance to submit expressions of interest. So initially the process is when you see a tender, there'll be an opportunity often to express interest, which is the very first area of the sort of the first process in the tender, or the first element of the tender process, my apologies. And what that looks like and how you do it, and then support with writing and submitting bids. How you've completed the tender business model canvas, which we'll get to later on, and what, you know, as we said before, what your value proposition is, how you design your value proposition for tendering with a local authority. And by that we mean it's quite an introspective process to look at your business harder. What are you offering? Why should they choose you? What makes you different? And what if it's not different? What is it from a quality point of view? Is it a unique product? Or if it's in an area that's loaded with other companies, how do you stand out? And then take through engagement through the entire program and regular and ongoing feedback. So this isn't just a case of take you through this and then, you know, you have the tools and get on with it. The idea is that we take you through and support you through the whole process. Now then, you'll appreciate, now I'm not in the area, so I'm just so you know, I'm up in Preston, Lancashire, so I don't know Watford well, but I believe this image here is actually with a Watford regeneration program. And so there is a question there about, did you bid? And I'm assuming, and you can correct me in the chat by all means, that many companies wouldn't have, they would assume maybe this is too big for me, this is for larger companies, not for us. The opportunities will be there and will have been there and will be there in the future. So we're going to start, so I can get a break and have a drink. We can start by a simple exercise. So we're going to ask those what your experience in bidding is. If you put a 1 in the chat for never tendered before, a 2 for completed a handful of tenders, or 3 for regularly submit bids and tenders. If you just can pop that in the chat and just let's have a look. So I can see there several with 1, a couple with 2, Claire with 3, excellent, and Leonie with 3. So regular submit bids. This is really interesting. One with done part, but not end-to-end meter. And then how would you describe, once you're happy that you've done that, how would you describe your level of success? For those that have put a 2 or a 3 in, how would you describe your level of success? Would it be good, average, or bad? You want to just pop that, if you have any thoughts on that in the chat. Good, that's good to hear, Andrew. And good meter. Leon, previous year's good, last 12 months average, and Claire average. We keep putting in bids of failing short, coming either 2nd or 3rd, right? Okay, so we in fact there's a way of looking at the reasons why possibly, and then the feedback that you might have got from the tender. So right, so thank you for that. That just gets us into the right space. And I'm just going to close that a second. So as a follow-on to that, we're going to ask you what the purpose of the bid process is. Now, it's not a test, like I said, there are no wrong answers here, but so there are 2 questions. Why do organizations go to tender? And what broadly do they look for in a provider? If you want to add some examples of this into the chat. This is just to progress the conversation. Like I said, there are no wrong answers in any of this. So if you want to have a thought about a couple of minutes on that question and put some answers in the chat. Now, that bit that's come up at the bottom there, putting yourself in the mind of the buyer, is one of the themes that we'll refer to several times through this presentation. You write your bid from their perspective, so you understand. So let's have a look at what you said. It's a legal framework to be fair and consistent. Absolutely. Test the market, again, absolutely valid. And look at, yeah, in my experience, it's all can be best value, of course, obviously, but best value doesn't always mean lowest price. I think that's important to put that out there. To be fair and expend the ability to find great partners, Bev, yep. And Arif, to get best value for money, reasonable cost, good quality, and reliability. Yeah, they're all absolutely all completely valid. So why companies go to tender and what companies are looking for, as you can see, several of the answers you've given there are listed here. There is also an element where, although it's not on this list, there are where they have to, the local authority will have to go to tender because it's over what called their threshold. So if it's over a certain value, and it will be different values for different local authorities, if it's over a particular value, then they have to go out to tender. That's a responsibility. But then once the justification for that is really to do all the things that you listed in the chat, and which are pretty much covered here: return on investment, sustainability, competitive price, deliver efficiencies, preferably those that can be measured. I think that's quite an interesting point, which we haven't got time to go into here in a lot of detail. However, the benefits that can be, or efficiencies that can be measured, is a really big deal. I've always described government contracts, both local and national level, extraordinarily interested in how you do something, not just that you do it. And so things that can be measured, efficiencies, both cost and otherwise, that they can be measured, are incredibly important. If you can build those into your tender response, into your bid response, that's a really, really strong part of your tender, and would actually definitely would score well. So just expanding on that. So to look at what they're looking for beyond just the specifics about cost and quality, what they're looking for in a company they're going to work for, generally with 3 years will be, you know, a pretty common length of time for a local authority contract. So what benefits are they looking for beyond delivery of the contract? So they're looking for improvements. They want to see if you understand your ability to carry out, that you're competent, that you're trustworthy, that you're a fit and proper company for them to work with, that you're going to still be around in 3 years' time. So they'll ask questions about your financial position, etc. But they want to see what your mindset is. Does your mindset and what your work as a company, does that align with how that local authority works, what their values are? And we'll get more into that later when we talk about research. And can you provide accurate real-time data? Do you have a future focused mindset, that you're always looking to, throughout the period of the contract, are you thinking you'll look for ways to continue to improve as the contract continues? Are you willing to take accountability? They will want, you know, and as I say they, the local authorities will want constant communication with you. They'll want regular conversation to understand how things are going. If there are problems, and problems sometimes happen, they need to know, and they'll often help you work through them. What they don't want is somebody to sign up and work the contract and then have no contact with them at all. That's not something they would want at all. And ultimately, are you based upon ensuring the satisfaction of the internal customer? And I would also say that ultimately, especially with local authorities, they're there to serve the community there. So another thing that could go on this list is that, do you understand what the local authorities' drivers are from their customer? Their customer is the people who live in the area, and if you can also build that into your response and understand that, that will come across very, very strongly. So before we get to any of that, though, it says this here: first things first. So there are elements that, regardless of the tender, regardless of what it is, there will be work you have to do. So initially, there is a supplier questionnaire, so sometimes called a PQQ, which is a pre-qualification questionnaire. That is a document that you complete. It asks you about things about the makeup of your company, legally, what your insurances are, if it's a complex structure, for example, you have lots of other divisions, or a company owns another company, what that structure is, who has overall control. This is essentially self-certification, but it absolutely has to be done. And once it's done, though, it can be repurposed for every tender. In fact, most of the things in fact, all the things here really, probably with the exception of pricing, are reusable through all tenders. So the form of tender, which will be public sector sign, a non-collusion certificate, basically to say that you're going to operate in a proper fashion. The terminology there, you'll see things that you won't have seen before. ITT, which is an invitation to tender, RFI, request for information, excuse me. These are things that will be made clear, but these are all different ways of the local authorities asking for information. A lot of this terminology is also replicated in the commercial world, but obviously we are focusing very much on the public sector for this presentation. As I said before, they'll ask for your accounts and financials, normally 3 years of audited accounts. Again, it's to see being in a simple fashion, if they want to work with you for some time, they need to feel that you're in a strong financial position and you're going still to be around in 3 years' time, being very blunt about this, because a lot of it's done on trust. They don't want a company that isn't going to be around in 3 years' time. So they'll ask these questions for that reason. It's not invasive, it's to build that trust up. Same reason for asking for references. So you can say anything about your company, but they want to be able to check that what you say is absolutely right. Policies are very important. On a lot of tenders, the requests might be slightly different, but they will ask policies about everything from ESG, ecological, through to policies on how you employ people, and policies on modern slavery, your supply chain, a whole series of things that will ask. But it'll be made very, very clear what policies you have. But essentially what you should be doing is putting all your policies together. And if there are gaps, then build that policy. It doesn't mean a 20-page document. If a policy can be an A4 that's really, really clear about this is our policy on, as long as it's absolutely clear and you adhere to it. The pricing file normally will be individual to each contract, depending on how that works. You might have an overall pricing structure, but depending on how the documentation is worded, it may all be something they provide, something for you to complete, or it might be something you provide yourself. Either way, you need to be very, very clear what your pricing is and answer their questions, because they might look to price things in a way that's slightly different from how you normally pricing. And right at the end, in bold, for very good reason, to plan and allow sufficient time, because this takes longer than you think, so you should always give yourself more time. So if it's to be done, you've got a week to do it, as an example, then do it in 3 days, 4 days. Always give yourself more time, because you will run out. Now, for the real writing. And the reason why we say that is because, like I said before, all this on the screen now is pretty much for every tender. That can be done, and it can be repurposed. Once you've done all this, you can pretty much, maybe with a bit of nuance tweaks, you can reuse that. Okay, but when you're completing your response to a particular tender, come back on the top there, allow efficient time to project manage your response carefully. Yeah, so there is always a clock ticking on every tender. It'll be made very, very clear when the response has to be in. So a lot of responses will be at 5 o'clock on a Friday, but the date will be clear. It is not acceptable for you to send that response to at 5:10 on the Friday, because it will be, they're very, very strict on this. It will not get any further. It will not be considered. And in order to do this, when I say project manager, I think the second thing, use a simple Excel spreadsheet to track your targets, goals, milestones. Work out what you need to do when in order to do this, and give yourself time to do it, and stick to those milestones. Part of that is you may have questions that you can, there's some things you might need answering questions on. Give yourself time to get the answers to those questions. Who on the bidding team can help you? Put together a bidding team. The bidding team might be a couple of people, but I would stress that it's better to do this with more than one. But who on the bidding team can help you? How can you spread the load on this? And your other stakeholders, if you have them, internal and external, how are they going to support you to build this response? Absolutely understand the deadlines. Going back to this element of time, as you can see, it comes up because it's so important. And we always advise work to a day before. So if it's Friday the 25th of March, and I'm just picking that, I don't even know if 25th of March is a Friday, but I'm just saying if it's Friday the 25th of March, then aim to have everything ready for the Thursday, not the Friday, preferably even the Wednesday, but certainly don't plan to have it complete on the Friday, because that is risky. And like I said, if you put it in late, you can put as many process stations in as you like, to the people waiting to looking at the bids, they won't consider it. And then as part of that, really important is to have somebody else that proofreads your response before you send, to make sure from a sense check point of view, not obviously spelling and grammar, etc., but also that it makes sense. So ideally, somebody who is looking at this cold, so they can go, right, absolutely, I get that, I understand. And if they don't get it, then look at it again. Because one of the things is here is that a very important element to understand is that certainly in the early stages of responding to a tender, you're not dealing with the department that might actually have the service delivered to you. You're dealing with procurement, a procurement team. They're not the experts. They just need to understand what you're saying, and it needs to be really, really clear. There is a risk if it's either badly worded or complicated or needlessly complicated or very, very technical, that it might be a case of, well, we just don't get this, so we're not going to pass that on. Clarity and unambiguous writing is incredibly important. And as we'll go into when you further in the program, when we get into in February about how to write bid response, simplicity or clarity is hard. Complex is actually quite easy. It's quite easy to write something complex. Writing something simple and easy to understand is a little bit harder. So that proof read is very, very important as part of this process. So, principal elements of winning a bid. So these are the elements that go through this. We're going to talk about a couple of them here. So winning bid at the right price, that of course is absolutely important. And although we don't go into here, one of the things is that you will know prior to responding to a tender what their scoring system is. So an example would be 40% price, 6% quality, or the other way around, you'll know. But it is always, as much as the price obviously and value is important, there is always a quality element to it. So this is the other theme. Besides understanding the client and getting in their head of the buyer and you understanding what their drivers are and what they need, this is probably the most important direction. Is you will have documentation. Once you've you'll be supplied with documentation you can download that details what the bid response should look like. It will give you a list of questions. Answer the questions directly. Absolutely. It is probably the most important thing, and one of the elements of the weakest bits. So you read the question twice, maybe read it 3 times, and answer exactly what they're asking for. Don't interpret it, answer what they say. Because again, this is going to a procurement team, and if that question, your answer doesn't fully answer the question, either won't go any further, or it will just end up with a lower score. There's nothing more important than answering the questions in the evaluation criteria. And to support that you show the understanding of the broader needs and objectives of that tender. They'll make it clear what they're trying to achieve. And it might just be, it may well be more than that, just that specific service or product they're asking for, that actually what they want to achieve is certain efficiencies, or they want to meet particular targets, etc. Make sure that your response understands those and answers them directly. So that your solution in that space is credible and competent. And making so this is really, really clear. You should be the experts in your area. It should be straightforward to demonstrate how you do what you do and why it's the right solution. But this really depends upon the next element, which is the benefits. So we're not talking about features. We're not talking about we do this, we do that, we have this, we have that. What is the benefit to the client? What does this do? When I was first in sales years ago, we used to insist on using a phrase, which means that. And while I'm not suggesting you use that particular phrase, it is important. If you find yourself talking about a feature, and I say, well, what means that? Which means it does something for, what does it benefit the client with? And that's what they're matters. You're not just getting across the fact that you do something well. It's why what you do and what you deliver, how that benefits the client and how that meets their needs. And then this has to be supported by evidence and really clear evidence that supports what you're saying, to show what you've done previously, how you operate, and to show that you've successfully delivered these things previously. It's incredibly important, because I said elements of this are really on trust. They want to work with you. This isn't a process to trip you up, but you do need to demonstrate clearly that you are competent, that you're fit to enter the market, and your solution has been delivered previously in a very, very good, productive way that they can then take advantage of. And then really, and this is overall, that your bid response is written leanly, clearly, and precisely. And I really like the phrase leanly. Like I said, it is hard to write lean, to write not simplistic, but simple language that gets sung across. It is a copywriting skill, and this is why copywriters are paid so much money. Learning this is incredibly valuable. It needs to have absolute clarity so that anybody, coming back to the comment I made about proofreading, that anybody can read through it and go, I get that. I understand what you're saying, understand what you're trying to get across, and why what this reads really, really strongly. Today, however, we're just concentrating on those first two areas, the directly answering questions and the show and understand of the broader needs and objectives. The other elements will come later on in the program. So the fundamental golden rule of bidding. This is really, really simple, but it's really, really key. Excellent bids will usually win contracts. Poor bids usually lose contracts. And what does an excellent bid look like? Well, it's all the elements that we've talked about here. But I suppose the two or three most important elements that we've learned is the making sure you understand what the client is after, and that you're empathetic to that, and that your solution meets that, that you write in a really, really clear, unambiguous way, and that you answer the questions that are being asked. If you hit those three elements, and with the backup and supporting documentation, you've got the basis of an excellent bid. Any one of those that's slightly weaker instantly makes it a poor bid and will lead to not progressing and not actually getting to win these contracts. There are sometimes other reasons why people don't win contracts, but one of the most common ones, if not the most common ones, is just the response isn't up to the standard that they expect. So again, to expand upon, I suppose I've already said some of these things, that if we look at the typical issues, incomplete answers or not understanding the question. There's no excuse for that if you think about it. The documentation is made really, really clear. If there is something in the documentation that you don't understand, there is an opportunity to contact the supplier, local authority, the procurement teams, and ask them for clarification on a question, which if they're able to, they will answer for you. So don't guess. So the second one, focusing only on business and not the customer, is an easy trap to fall into. This gets into the same one as describing features, and those two are linked really. But it isn't about you. It's absolutely about the customer, and can you solve their problem? Can you provide what they need? Making sure that the benefits are really, really clear, that you can back them up with evidence. There are lots of others, but those top four are probably the key ones. If you get them right, then a lot of the other things should balance and might be smaller issues. But those four things are absolutely, if you're weak on any of those, I'm going to say you're wasting your time, but you're going to close to be in a difficult position with your tender not getting any further. And it'd be very frustrating if you don't learn from that. The whole aim of Fit to Bid, coming back to the name again, is to get you in that position where you are fit and understanding what you do. The quality of your response is not the issue at all. You're going to be delivering excellent tender responses at the end of this program. So here's the why question. And this is the why question that you ask us. And it's the why question that you should expect the client to be asking of you. Why choose us? You're going to write a winning bid. You have you have everything. You have all your collateral together. And the why is something that you should ask us. Sitting outside it, like I said, being introspective. Why would somebody choose us, meaning you as your company? Why would they choose you? So we're going to have a quick exercise again, just give too much information away. But why should a client choose your company as a supplier? And how can you show evidence that you've proven expertise in the services required? So just going to give you a couple of minutes to have a think about that, and then just add some examples in the chat if you can. Okay. So a few there. So they only to meet strategic goals. Specialized testimonial case study. We offer a unique solution. Relevant delivery experience, direct customers case studies on website. Yeah, meter. Yeah. Provide next level end of customer service and Google reviews. Latest print, yes, so latest technology and reviews, case study evidence. Yeah. So these are all relevant. I'm just, if that's okay, so I'm just going to go on to the next screen. So again, by putting yourself in the mind of the buyer, right? So again, we repeat from before, empathy is really important, is to get yourself in their headspace. So Leonie, technical capability, previous experience, absolutely. So these reasons here, you reference really, really well. So how well do you know the client? Do you have a relationship? Part of Fit to Bid is to help you start those relationships. That's really important. But if you don't have the relationship, then you can do the research so you understand the drivers for that local authority. And of course, you can reach out and look if there's opportunities to have a conversation with them prior to bidding. Evidence, case studies, testimonies, references, and where they can find this evidence. Really, really key. Obviously, your website is useful. Your website should be used to, where possible, to show these things off so you can point to it. And obviously, you provide that as part of it. But your case studies, your testimonials, your references are so important. Can you demonstrate expertise and experience in that sector? It's very important. If you are looking at a particular sector, you need to show that you've worked in that sector before. This is what you've delivered. These are the outcomes. And then hopefully that should work, could link to a testimonial. One of the things is that with case studies is really important, that it is no point providing case studies that do not reference what the tender is about. If possible, they need to link to, sometimes rephrase, to make sure that case study again helps to answer the questions and meet the benefits and the requirements of that tender. If the case study reads as something completely outside what this is, then it doesn't have the value that it needs to have, and that's really important. Have you worked on similar contracts, and can you show what value you've added? Well, that's an expansion on the previous one. And the knowledge and experience of your team. The people involved, it's really important to demonstrate what your skill levels and experience are, and what your team looks like. And are you correctly resourced? Would you be bringing extra people in, and how would that actually operate if you're required to, say, for example, 1 or 2 extra people in order to deliver a particular contract? How would you do that, and how would the team look like, and what experience would you be looking for? Are all considerations to make sure that the fingers out, this is the right kind of company for us to work with. So it says that download brochure. I like this because I have seen examples in my own time of a bid response being essentially a company sharing their brochure. And is that enough? Well, the answer is no. But on to the other thing, if you just show your brochure may well be your marketing materials, or even your elevator pitch and what your company does may be the same as many other companies. You may be in a crowded market, and how do you differentiate yourself? So that needs to lose generic language of the kind that's normally found in the brochure. And you start building a narrative that is focused on that tender, is focused on what that organization is looking to do and what they need to do, and make sure that when you provide that narrative with the evidence, that it is tied exactly to what they're after, to show that you understand clearly, not that we're a great company, but it's the fact that you have looked and you've researched, you understand, you can align your values and your product absolutely to what the needs of that client are. And if you're able to do those things and evidence them, then that will definitely score the highest marks and progress further, hopefully to a positive conclusion. So this is one of the themes. It's been referenced several times. And it is important to drive this home. Understanding what you're being asked and the objectives are critical to writing a winning answer. We can't actually stress this enough, that you are provided with effectively a golden ticket. And by that I mean you're given all the information. They tell you what they need. It's really clear, generally speaking. They're really easy to understand. You know what they're after. You answer that question and make sure that the objectives that they're after are contained in that answer. You're always focused on that, and that will make a strong bid. If you part answer a question, or God forbid you miss a question, then it's basically guaranteed to score you low on something that really you've no excuse, but not. The information is there for you to work through. So that golden rule, I agree, is probably the most important. So when we talk about the objectives and drivers, so if we take, for Watford Borough Council example, will have their own objectives and drivers. They will be published. They'll one of the benefits of looking at tenders in the public sector, or looking at the public sector as a client, is that word public, because there is so much information available, and we'll get to the research of that a little bit later. But all this information will possibly be provided in the tender documentation, where they'll say, this is what we're doing, this is why, but you can always look to more to understand what their real drivers are in that particular area. But once you understand what the objectives are for that particular project, and make sure that you have this in mind right at the top of the list when you respond in any way, shape or form. How does that reference the project? How does that add value to the project? How does that deliver what they need? It said the absolute needs of the project. How does that, what are the core, the top needs? There probably will be some sub needs. Some of them might be nice to have. Some of them might be, it would be, they won't use that phrase nice to have, but some of them might, but what can you do to meet everything they need? And what other things can you possibly support as the contract goes on? And yeah, added value, not nice to have, the wrong thing. So what can you add value on top of the actual core elements of the tender, so that when you're reading through and you say, yes, we can do X, Y, Z, and we've made that really, really clear. But in their summary, they also add that, so it would be, we are also looking to add this and this as time goes on. Can you reference that, and can you add value on top of that? So all these, it sounds a lot, and it is a lot of work, but it gets easier once you get, and getting into the mindset of what the client is after is the key. So if you think about these two themes that I identified before, one is the making sure you answer the question, and two, that you understand what they're trying to achieve. You understand what the client from their point of view. Those two things will help with writing, always help with writing a winning bid. And these things are laid out. So in the invitation to tender, the ITT, there will be a specification. And in there, now, these are written by people, and there might be different phraseology used with different organizations and different local authorities, but they will always make it really clear, attempt to make it clear what the specification is, what it is they expect, and how they want their answers, the questions answered. We can ask questions. There's two ways of doing this. There will be a name, sometimes be a number. Often these people aren't easy to get on the phone, but they will answer questions by email. But also there is often an opportunity to join a call and ask questions. Now, on that particular call, which will be organised by the client, your competitors may well be on that call, so it's an opportunity for general questions, not really specific ones. But it is often valuable. And then specific questions you can send by email through. So they are there to help you. I think one of the most important things, and this is what we learned ourselves and my colleagues when we first got into them, we actually looked to bid on tenders ourselves. The opportunity to ask questions and realizing you will get answers, because they're not actually blockers. They're not. They want the right provider. They want the right service provider. And they're not after any particular thing. They just want the question. They want the questions answered. They want to select the right company. And once you realize you can actually have this dialogue, it's incredibly powerful. We can carry out research, increase, improve, or understand. Yes, we'll get more into research, because in the public sector, research is really quite easy. There's so much information there. And we can clarify client questions through the formal Q&A process. Yeah, that was normally laid out. I've done this slightly in the wrong order, but the Q&A process will be set out normally by emails, but also there may well be supporting calls, as I mentioned before, which would be a group call, not an individual call, likely. The question elements of maximizing your score. So we've referenced score a few times. The scoring system will be made really clear, or hopefully really clear in the 10 documents as to how they score it. So to come back to hammering this home about clarity, correctly understand the question elements makes it easier to understand. Absolutely. If you don't understand, ask the question. Don't guess. Don't make it up. Even if you're pretty sure, you're 99% sure. If you want to establish that 1%, ask the question, then you know that you're answering it in the right way. And how you structure your answer. Again, the structure of your answer should be really clear in how they're asking the question. It should be clear on how they're expecting it to be answered. Again, you can double check on that, and also make sure that you're answering the question fully, just like an exam question. Go back, you've done your answer, go back to the question, does it actually answer it? And again, that oversight of having somebody to proofread that as well afterwards to understand have you done both is really important, because it would be, it's really bad to go through all this and then score fewer marks just because you've missed an element off. Your first part of your answer is excellent, but actually you haven't fully answered the question. So this is a question here, as I said, from a real bid. So I want you to give you a second to read through this and answer how many elements must our answer address. And I just want you to kind of put a number, have a read through and put a number in of what you think, how many elements of this need to be addressed. And then we'll talk through on the next slide. Just give you a minute. Okay, so just conscious of time. Okay, Mita, it's really, really good that you could join. It's a shame you've had to leave, but thank you for joining thus far. So what we'll do is I'll give you an indication if we go to the next. So there are actually, we've identified 6. So you're looking at high-level description, the structure of the company, structure of the division, number of people in each team, description of the resources expected, describe other key contracts being delivered, and how many resources conflicts will be managed. So they're the ones. So you've looked at that you need to make sure that you hit all of those to supply the information that they're actually asking for. And so these are explicit. They're really, really clear. And if you miss one of them, then by definition, you won't have a full response and you will score less. So this is an example of evaluation criteria. It varies. So this is just guidance, and we're not going to go into detail in each one. But it obviously ranges from no response, a vague answer, right through to well-defined solution, clear benefits, backed by strong evidence, quantification has been included, which shows clear value. The score of 5 is the one to concentrate on. That's what you want to achieve. You want to hit all those markers. You don't want, let's say 3, there is reasonable evidence. The answer describes the solution adequately with some benefit. You don't want to leave any gaps. You want to make it really, really clear. So like I said, there'll be different criteria with different suppliers. That gives you an idea. You want to be over here with no gaps at all, not over here where it's generally okay, because okay won't do. Remember, excellent bids win tenders. So researching the client, exercise 5 here. So this is the last one. So just quickly, what are your potential source of information on a customer? And when doing research, what are you looking for? So if you want to just put something in the chat on both those things. So what are your potential source of information? So if you were looking at a client, if looking at a local authority, where would you go for information? And a commercial one, but yeah, Google, an obvious one. Could be a bit more specific. Website, market insight plan, budget, exactly. Internet competitors, their website, company's house, obviously for a private company that has its uses. In the, what I would say is meeting minutes. Yeah, Claire, that's a very, very important point. In the public sector, so much information is available. And that's a really valuable resource, and LinkedIn for their people, I agree. So we'll just go on to that. Sorry, just about time. So if you were looking at Brandoing, obviously you've gone to Brandoing's website and there's a full structure. You know how all the people involved, if you want to contact somebody, it's really, really clear. You understand what they do. And the amount of information that's available in a situation at their website, their view of the world. That's a very, very good point. Their view of the world, so Brandywin's view of the world and how they view themselves. They can glean a lot of information before you were looking. So, if you were looking to tender to somebody like Brandywin, this information would help you massively. And you look at the LinkedIn company page. Often LinkedIn company pages are not very exciting, but they do give information that could be of real value. Some people do more on their company pages than others. And obviously looking at networking, social media, your social media sites, etc., anything where that client or that company is referenced, every bit of information you can get is hugely valuable. When it comes to local authorities, they all have extensive websites with a huge amount of information. And both of the people, policies, plans, etc. This is enormous amount of information that you understand. You can check a council's values and what their drivers are for the world. As it says, what's new in their world, what are they concentrating on in the next 12 months, what are they proud of, what do they mention, what's their headline elements that they're looking at over the next 12, 24 months. And you can go further to see what opportunities are, because they will always have a procurement page. You might call it various different, doing business with the local authority would be an example. They'll tell you often what they've done in previously, what they've got planned for the next 12 months or in the next financial year. So you can understand what areas they're interested in. This is ahead of doing any procurements, and they often will have a page listing what they've got live and how you get more information on that. So, and also elements of the mention of the procurement team itself, and if you can contact them, and if they've any meet the buyer kind of events set up for you to be able to visit. So this amount of information is hugely valuable. You'll get more information in the public sector than you often will in the private sector, just because, of course, as mentioned before, this is something they have to revise. So meeting minutes, etc., planning applications, all these kind of things that might actually, depending on what you do, might help you massively. So when you're doing all this research, you can see it is oceans of information, and you get better and better at it the more focused you are. But if you understand what a council wants to do, what their plans are, what their drivers are, what their obligations are, because there are some things they're obligated to provide, and that will then help you right at the beginning when you're looking at providing a response, or be ahead of response. But if you're looking at respond, it's wise to say, well, we have a tender response for Watford Borough Council. Why don't we look at what Watford Borough Council are actually looking at outside what documentation provide? Go onto the website and do some research and find out some more, because if you can build some of that into your response, it may well make it much stronger. And again, just to tell you about the places you can look. So your bid document, that leads their thinking, your internal resources, previous bids and feedback, annual report. If it's a commercial company, then you can look at Glassdoor for information on how they operate and what they're like sometimes as an employer, etc. Google Alerts, where you can set up a search on a particular phrase, and it will highlight that for you on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day. The ability to attend events, federations, government papers, published minutes, as we've referenced a couple of times. Credit reference agencies can be useful if you're in the commercial world, other divisions of subsidiaries, and also competitors' websites, because their competitor will say, right, okay, well, we've delivered this is what we're doing, so you understand what they're doing and how they're operating. Basically, the internet is your friend. This is an amazing resource now that we have to be able to do research in a particular sector. And what do you look for? Well, so you look at anything that gives an idea of strategy, or their visions and values we've mentioned before. And, without going through every one of these, because I think we've mentioned most of them already, if you understand what the issues, the benefits, the drivers, the visions and values are of an organization, be it commercial or public sector, then it's obviously going to inform your response. As it says, the more you know about your prospects, clients in advance, the better. Absolutely. So that kind of brings us to the end of this. I know it's a whistle stop, and it is just to get your head in to understand what goes into this Fit to Bid program. And we have another one on the 7th of February, which is Improve Your Bid Response, which is going into bid response in way more detail than we've done today. Then obviously there's a Meet the Buyer live event. And then in March, there's the Writing Public Sector Bid and Tenders, which is a more advanced version. And then there's the one-to-one sessions. There'll be more information provided with that by our colleagues in Brandon. So to give you an idea what's coming up in the future. So the Meet the Buyer event on the 14th of March, an enormous opportunity, huge, a fantastic opportunity to meet decision makers from Watford Council and local anchor institution, meaning large buyers. The ability to have those people, there's such value. I implore you to take advantage of this because it's an incredible opportunity to be in the room with these decision makers on both public and private sector. And that's on the 14th of March. So we have a big capability assessment questionnaire. This is worth 10 minutes of your time. And this gives you the ability to for you to look at your present position, what your skills are, what your concerns are, and also enables us to understand where you are in this process, what you think your blockers are, and how you think whether you're ready to go to enter the market, and what support you think you need. That information then feeds into the document here, giving us understanding of what your main issues are and what your action plans might be. And so we then take that action card. It won't be me, but my colleagues in Brandon. And then this is a debate in place to enable them to complete and submit a bid. This is the whole point. The whole point of this process is to put in a strong position to build a quality bid. And so getting information from you obviously is hugely valuable. Now, just quickly, I know we've got sort of time, but this just quickly, we're not going into detail, but these are case studies of people that have gone through the program who've been hugely successful, that they've taken themselves forward. Say here, there's one company here where they now work with a team. They got Team Heathrow status, so that via this program. The case study here of a cleaning company. Now, the Crown Commercial Service supplier, they can actually put on their marketing material that they supply to the government at local level, and that's an amazing thing to have. And then Healthy Air Technology here, Silver Winner Businesswoman of the Year, supported by the programs that Brandon supply. So quickly, how to join the program. You attend the skills webinars, and you can do with Tracy to make sure that you're onto all of those. You can book a one-to-one advice session. And then from then you submit an expression of interest for major projects or construction projects and develop a winning bid, depending on which area it is. But it all starts with attending the skills webinars. Start with them and then get to the one-to-one, and then obviously take your company forward to successfully enter the market and hopefully be very successfully tender on and win government contracts or local authority contracts, which will be of huge value to you. And that whistle stop as I said, this is my first time doing this, so I'll probably take a little bit longer than I should, and I appreciate your patience in me getting through this with you all. So there is, I'm going to give a quick opportunity here for anybody to ask any quick questions if they wish. I'm just going to open the chat. There is the info at Brandon website there, email address and the phone number there if you want more information. I'm just going to open up the chat. Thank you, Nazar. No problem if the webinar overruns by 10 minutes. Okay, well, that's good. So, so somebody has just looking at fittobid.co.uk/Watford, but can't see the link to the questionnaire. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to double check that is, my apologies. Let's just do this again. That's what you get for pressing buttons in the wrong order. Sorry, guys. I'm just to be for full. I have problems with this right at the beginning, and there we go. So, so hope that should be working. Fittobid.co.uk/Watford. The link is on the image. I don't know if we're going to share this pack with those that have been that have attended, and then they could. I don't know if that's what we're doing as well. The link is on the image. So is there any other questions? Okay, Bev, a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm glad you found it interesting. I'm hoping that you'll engage with the rest of the program successfully. Thank you very much for your time. You're welcome, Leonie. and Katie. Claire, you are welcome. So I am assuming that we have no further questions. I'm glad you found it useful, Arif. That's good to know. It is a lot of information. I know it's a lot to take in, but hopefully just give you a taster of the fact is the opportunities are there and it's worth the work. I think that's the but work in the right way so you don't waste a lot of energy and time putting into this. Okay, so I think I'm assuming now that so I'm going to say if there's no more questions, then thank you very, very much for your time and your support. And I'm hoping that you go and go to the Fit to Bid Watford website, fill in the questionnaire, get yourself registered on the next session, where I look forward to seeing you there as well. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll leave it there. Thank you.